where to find a mentor, how to best work with them, and even how you can become a mentor yourself. So if you'd like to get access to more events like this and join a club where you can connect with industry colleagues from around the world, check out the Xsolla Diamond Club, where you can join for free today. Link in description below. So I would love to have everyone on this amazing panel introduce themselves and tell us a bit about how they work in conjunction with the topic today, which is mentorship within the game space. Can we start with Anisa?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Anisa Sanusi. I'm the founder of Limit Break Mentorship, a mentorship program aimed at underrepresented people working in the UK games industry. So we are based in the UK and we have about 700 people in our current cohort, and we are opening up for registration next spring in 2022.
Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Edwards. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Game Jam, which is the world's largest game creation event taking place in many countries. We currently also have an event, GGJ Next, for younger creators. It's taking place right now. In this capacity and in my former role as the head of the IGDA, not the foundation, but the IGDA. And also just a longtime veteran of the game industry. I mentor a lot of people who come to the Global Game Jam tend to be students or people wanting to start out in the industry. And so we spend a lot of time helping them kind of get up to speed on what it means to work in the game industry.
Nika.
Hey everyone, my name is Nika Nour. I'm the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association Foundation, not the IGDA, as Kate mentioned. We are really proud to be exclusively focused as a 501c3 nonprofit on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we specifically do that by broadening and increasing the representation of the video game workforce. We believe that the change happens from top down, and we're not going to really get a fair shot in broadening that representation unless diverse individuals actually become the leaders. And so we really invest not just from the early state of like the pipeline and getting people in the door, we invest in people that are mid-career as well. So we run plenty of partnerships and initiatives where we do a lot of mentorship pairings. It's definitely an art, not a science. And I'm really excited to talk more about our programming and how you can find your own mentor without necessarily needing to apply to a scholarship or a program, et cetera.
And Tanja.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Tanja Loktionova, and I'm the founder of Valued Value. It's a HR and recruitment company based in the Eastern Europe. We work mainly on the markets of Ukraine, Russia, Belarus. As a company that aims at bringing the best talent to the coolest companies, we support every mentorship and equality initiative that can only happen in our region. And that is why we are a part of the Mentors Dialogue. We are a part of Achievers Hub platform, and any initiative regarding mentorship is supported by my company.
That's amazing. So now that we've found out a bit of kind of what y'all do within the space and your connections to some awesome orgs out there that are centered around mentorship or have it as a strong priority, I would love for our first question, which is, how does one go about finding a mentor? Everyone talks about, you should have a mentor if you want to progress, but then you're like, okay, where? So I would love to pass this off to Tanja, and like, how do you go and find one? How do you start?
So my best advice would be to go to LinkedIn and not to be shy and write a message to a person who really seems to be cool and who seems to be your ideal professional that you aim to become. And just to write him and say, hey, I wanted to become your mentee because of these and these reasons. And there is a very huge chance of success. I know very little people who refuse or just leave such messages unread. They can at least tell you who else to address, but most of the people will never refuse. And it's besides of all the amazing platforms and solutions that do this systematically.
Nika.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a kind of a different approach. I mean, personally, if you're not in a program, if you haven't, been accepted to an initiative or you're not part of one and you're kind of getting a mentor out solo, like step one is, and I had and still have this problem. I was too shy to go out and ask. Like, the problem is the mentors that I wanted, like I want executives. I want to be like the boss, but everybody who's a boss is outrageously busy, very inaccessible, especially in games. And so I had a hard time, and I lucked out in the industry where mentors eventually found me, probably just because I'm really loud and have big ideas and want to make change happen. But my kind of like one thing that I would structure, especially if you're having a hard time, right? It's not like a Bachelor reality TV show, like, will you have this rose and be my mentor, right? It's like a little bit, that could be awkward. Like my advice is more, I'm like a coffee meeting fanatic. So like, especially now, I always reach out, like, can I pick your brain? Can I talk to you a little bit about your life virtually, in person, whatever it is. I was a big proponent and was really good about asking people for coffee, buying their coffees. I've done some virtual, like, can I just pick your brain? You seem, I mean, flattery gets you everywhere. I always told you, like, you seem really interesting and you've just done a lot. I know this is a little weird, but I'm a rising, aspiring, whatever. And I just so badly want to learn more about you. And I would just take the first couple interactions asking everything I can about them, barely even talking about myself. And over time, people would just be like, oh my gosh, you're so awesome. And I'm like, cool, I haven't said anything about myself, but people just fall in love with people who, flatter and go. So that's another approach. I've never been good about being like, yo, mentor me. It's just it's not my style. It's not my bailiwick of language, but so that's one way. I go for the long game.
Some charismatic advice to those in the audience. Kate.
Yeah, those are all really great ideas.
It is.
And I definitely second LinkedIn, because that's where most of the mentees that I have come through LinkedIn. The great majority of them. I mean, they come through other sources too, whether it's people I meet at events when there are live events eventually again, and also just through various other channels. But also to Nika's point too, I totally agree that it's more the soft sell if you want to reach out to somebody. And I totally get that there are a lot of introverted people out there in the game industry and in the creative media space. I'm one of them. I'm faking extroversion right now. So, you have to push yourself to send that message or to send that email or to reach out. But like others have said, the soft approach works a lot better. It's similar to like if you're looking for a job, you don't just send somebody on LinkedIn your resume. You don't do things like that. What you do, which has been alluded to, you see somebody on LinkedIn, you really admire their work, and maybe start with that. It's a game you really love to play, or the artwork in that game is amazing, or whatever it might be, related to the job function that you want to do, or that you are doing. Reach out to that person and ask them questions about their work, because there's pretty much nobody in the creative media, including games, who don't like talking about themselves and their work. So, and I will do that too. People reach out to me and they'll hear a lecture I did and say, hey, I'd like you to explain this a bit better. I'm like, absolutely, let's get on a call. I'd love to talk about it, because I think it really comes down to tapping into the passion they have for the topic and the passion they have for their work. And if you tap into that, it's really unlikely that they're not going to want to talk about it. The only factor is just finding the time to do it. Like others have said, the people tend to be super busy. So that's the bigger challenge I see.
And Anisa.
Yeah, I think what everyone said is a good start, definitely. And I think partially the reason I started Limit Break at all is because I wanted to address some of the things that, again, a lot of people who are in the games industry, they're not necessarily online all the time, as in they might not be on LinkedIn, they might not be on Twitter, they might not be on any certain social media platform, and sometimes the loudest person or the most visible person isn't necessarily the best person or the most free person to be able to take on mentors, and that's kind of why I wanted to build a platform to just do, matchmaking where you could apply to it, and we kind of break down that barrier for you. Like, we are the person, because our organization takes out the awkwardness of you asking. So we have like a process where you kind of fill out a form and you talk about yourself, and we ask specific questions, stuff like who are you, what's your ambitions, what your dreams, what are your specific issues that you have right now. And a lot of mentors kind of resonate with journeys that mirror theirs, when they see like, oh, if someone is going through, let's say, they're an immigrant and they're trying to find their footing with visa situations and things like that, they might not have the exact answers, but because they've been through that, maybe they've also been through the immigration process, they might be more keen to be attached to this mentee. So we get a lot of really good background stories from members, and most of the mentees, they don't have the network to know who to ask for mentorship. So that's the other thing, where like when you're new, your network's pretty small and you have no idea who's who and what is what. So it's really daunting for someone new to industry. So that's kind of where Limit Break kind of helps to, again, take out the awkwardness, and we do all the introductions for you. So all you have to do now is just arrange your meetings, and we do encourage people to go meet up face to face. Well, pre-pandemic. And because of the pandemic, we kind of went online, and that's kind of broadened up even more, because we've realized, especially with the UK, a lot of the games industry is London centric, whereas a lot of people looking for mentorship are outside of London. And this kind of, again, it's just breaking that barrier down and just facilitating connections. And I'm sure we're not unique in the sense at all. I'm sure there's a lot of other mentorship programs that is helping people just connect to other people, and yeah, that's kind of, if you can, like, go up to somebody and muster that courage, like, all the power to you. But also, if you can't, like, if you're an introvert or if you're shy, there are other people who are willing to help you, to introduce you to people as well.
That's awesome. Something Anisa touched on, that which leads me to our next question, is a bit about that there's such a vast amount of people out there. So figuring out as a mentee, just because they have experience in your field does not mean they would be a good mentor. And that's no shade to anyone. Those are tools you need to develop, right? So you can be in a right place to do that. How do you know as a mentee, when you're looking, how someone is a good mentor? What are some signals or actions that they can do that could signal to you, oh, hey, this is someone that would be good for mentorship or to mentor me? Anisa.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a trial and error, because someone professionally is different personally, and when you have a mentorship relationship, it is like a bit of half and half, where you get to know the person a little bit better. How else are you going to help them, right? So it does take like 1, 2, 3 meetings. Like, if you vibe off the bat, then that's great, that's amazing. I think you kind of just get that, this person understands you, this person is actually giving you really good advice. I would say after maybe 2 or 3 meetings, if you're not feeling it, if you're just not like excited to tell them about your progress, about what just happened this week, I think that's a really good indicator that maybe this person might not be the best person for you. And I think there's a lot of awkwardness of kind of acknowledging that. And I would say just be honest. It's fine. Like, you don't want to waste each other's time. And it's just how things are.
Yeah, Kate.
Yeah, I would say that you do have to, at some point, even though that we said you kind of take a more of a soft approach in finding that person, I think at some point you do need to actually have that conversation about, if you feel that this person with whom you're having some interchange, whether it's on LinkedIn or elsewhere, that you feel that, okay, ask them, like, are you comfortable being my mentor, or do you mind, like, if I send you questions? You don't even have to say mentor, but even if you have to frame it in such a way so it's kind of like this social contract. So you say, do you mind if I send you questions every once in a while? Would that be okay? And if they say, yeah, that's fine, no problem, then that kind of sets up the relationship. And then that's when you test it. So then you do send them those questions, and don't forget to send the questions. Send them the questions and see if they answer in a fairly reasonable amount of time. And what fairly reasonable means is going to vary widely depending on who you're talking to. I mean, I know sometimes I get messages, or questions from my mentees, and I may not get back to them for a week or two. You know, but see, I'm upfront about that. I know what my time management is like. So I tell them, I said, if I don't answer your question, ping me, please, you know, go ahead, you know, even tag me on Twitter saying, hey, why aren't you answering me? You know, it's like, I'm fine with that because I know what my time management is like. And so, so I try and be really upfront with them about that in terms of what to expect with my response time and all that. So I think you need to have that conversation, but definitely to Anisa's point, you will talk to people who it's not going to work out because they're just either too busy, or maybe the feedback that they're giving you is not really the feedback you're looking for. And so that's when you just have to say, hey, you know what, I appreciate your time, thanks a lot. And you don't even have to like have a hard breakup or anything, because one thing I would say is be really careful about expressing your frustration, because as big as the game industry is, it's not big, it's small, and people remember each other. So, you know, basically be nice to each other no matter what.
Very, very true. Nika.
Yeah, I second what folks have said. Obviously, maintaining good relationships and not burning bridges is important. And I think a lot of time as I see younger mentees who want to go up and, you know, like to their mentor, and I get it, you want to pour your heart out, you're like, this is my mentor, I'm going to tell you, but your mentor is not your therapist.
Yeah.
Like that's like, it's a professional relationship where you can, like, once you've built that rapport, you can go through like certain dynamics. And also not every mentor is like the right fit for a mentee. Like there might be some parts of your background or parts of their background, like where you're not going to get a one-for-one advice, because every single human being is very unique and has unique experiences. So you don't, whether you're like a mentor that seems to fit your needs or not, or you think they're not fitting your needs, again, like you're soliciting a mentor for a reason. You want guidance, but it's up to you at the end of the day. The onus and the advocacy of yourself is you. Like if you're going to live your life by how other people like tell you to live, that is not a life to live. And that's the truth. And you have to figure out, like, you can take everything and take in the suggestion stride, but mentors are not meant to be a syllabus or a roadmap to what you do next. And if you are taking advice like very seriously, or you're literally kind of just playing copycat and treating your mentorship like a to-do list, you're going to have frustrations and you're going to set yourself up for failure that is just unexpected.
Yeah, your mind frame is also very important before you go into this kind of relationship. And Tanja, if you have anything else to add, so any signals.
I would add that mentorship is not a lifetime relationship, of course. Yeah, and you can always try to find someone new and take some pauses. But besides that, I would recommend peer-to-peer mentorship. If you find it really hard to find a mentor, then try to talk to people who are on the same level of expertise and try to start with this. And then you will at least know the questions that you really want to ask. And it will help you to find an experted mentor later on.
That's great. So many different angles in which you can approach this. And I appreciate y'all showed a pretty wide spectrum of how you can get like the same result, which is appreciated. This is a really good question for mentees to ask themselves. If you have advice about when will they know when they're ready for a mentor? I don't know if that's signals, parts in your career, questions you're asking yourself. What is kind of going through someone's head when they realize that they're ready to take that step? Tanja.
Well, I cannot answer this question to myself, because every time that I happen to be a mentor or a mentee, it was a very soft process of networking first. And it was like Nika said, I want you for coffee, and we just had very interesting conversations regarding to games and industry. And then hop, you see that you have calls once a week or twice a month, or maybe even more rare, but anyway, it's exchange that helps both parties. Because why I like to be a mentor, it uh, keeps me very close to what is happening in the industry and what is happening in production, and what are the needs and expectations and hopes and dreams of the developers. And this is what I would answer.
Yeah, Nika.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's like two approaches. I love this like question, like, how do you know when you're ready?
Yeah.
Like, I've never been like, I woke up, I drank my coffee, and I'm ready. Right? Like, I've never, right? It's like, but there's one of two steps. There's usually like, I do remember very early in my career, I was like, I'm drowning. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. How do I figure this out? I gotta figure out, I gotta find somebody that like knows what's up. And so then I go out on like an expedition and I'm like, all right, then that's kind of like maybe the closest I'm ready. But all the other times, you know, finding a mentor, like the readiness, like you're never really ready. Like your mentor kind of ultimately finds you. Like it's the person that like you're having a hard time problem solving this very specific thing, and you're going to pick up the phone and like, oh, let me ask this person, right? Like it's always like the vibe, like you just have like 3 consecutive coffees and they're so good and you're laughing so hard and you're crying a little bit too. And then you realize you didn't even talk about anything you meant to talk about. Like that's kind of the other element as well. But like if you approach this thing with like, all right, I'm ready, I'm gonna go and find my mentor. Like set that expectation with yourself. Like it's not overnight. Sometimes it's just like a ridiculous thing that happens unless then you go into a program where you pour your heart and soul into an application and people can actually judge holistically what's going on and find somebody in their network to sponsor you. But I like this idea that people are like, I'm ready. That feels like a TikTok or something.
It's a TikTok or like a hero's journey. You're like, I've crossed the threshold. I have reached the point. I am ready for mentorship. Kate.
I generally would put it in 2 different categories because if I think about all the mentees that I've talked to over the years, it really comes down to 2 questions that they're asking themselves, which is the point at which they come to me. It's either I don't understand, fill in the blank. So I don't understand whatever. I don't understand how to get a job. I don't understand how to, do a culturalization review on a game. I don't understand whatever. So it's the seeking of knowledge. So that's one angle. The other one is I don't feel I can, and then fill in the blank. And so it's often that question that's on their mind. That's the imposter syndrome issue. They're lacking their confidence. They look at their own work and they just don't see the value in their own work. And so generally speaking, those are the 2 questions that I often find mentees coming to me are asking themselves. And a lot of times those can be conflated together. They don't understand something, or they feel their skills are inadequate because they don't understand. And so that's generally those 2 scenarios. So that's basically the way what I've seen. And I know for myself too, when I've sought out mentorship, even though I never really did it formally, except in hindsight, when I realized, oh yeah, that person was a mentor to me, that's great. But at the time, all I was doing was asking a question about like, hey, can you explain to me how this works? Because I just don't get it. And so that would be basically the 2 scenarios I see.
Amazing. That's very helpful. Anisa.
Yeah. So Limit Break, I've realized that there are specific types of people who I would call them like quality mentees, because they show up and they have they always have something to ask. And usually I think these are the people who know they want to have a mentor, is because they have a bigger ambition or they have somewhere to get to, and mentorship is just one of the many smallest steps to get towards to whatever they're going to. And I think that is as close as you're going to get to feeling ready, which is when you know what you want to do. Or when you don't know what you want to do, again, and you're kind of feeling lost, like Kate said, there's like the type of person who is going somewhere, and that person who kind of just needs to be told that they're okay, they're doing fine exactly where they are as well. Because yeah, especially with like marginalized people in the games industry, imposter syndrome is everywhere. Even more so in the mentors than the mentees, if I'm being honest. And it's like a two-way relationship where sometimes it's the mentees that is kind of like converting the mentor, saying like, no, you know your shit, like this is great, like you're actually giving me good advice, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I know my stuff. So yeah, I think it's when people have, again, when they're in their hero's journey, you know, that's when, you know, you're trying to find their Gandalf or their whatever. And that kind of energy, that kind of, it kind of attracts other people who kind of sees that in you, you know, whenever someone a bit more experienced sees somebody who's equally motivated or, you know, really driven, you kind of want to help them, you know, just like, yeah, I can totally see you going far, and you kind of attract those kind of energy as well.
I love that. I also, this is so funny. We got a question from chat, which is asking the definition of mentorship, which also leads to our perfect next question, which I would love to hear y'all's takes on. But what is the difference and definition between a mentor, a career coach, a sponsor, or a teacher? So those are 4 different ones. So if any of those like really, you know, like I feel passionate about that one, I would just love to hear your takes. And let's start with Anisa.
Okay, so I remember a discussion that we had in my circle where like, is it ethical for mentors to charge? And yeah, that had a really big discussion. And I think that came down to the distinction of like, well, if you're a teacher and you're teaching them skills, then yes, you can charge for that. But when as a mentor, it's less about, you know, it's less of a service, and it's more of an investment as well from your part as a person in the industry to give back to this younger person. It's kind of the act of putting the ladder down. So I would say a mentor is invested in both the careers and also just like the personal development of their mentee, like these two things put together. Whereas a teacher, they're more likely to teach you specific skills in certain areas. And I would say like a career coach is specifically, you know, to do with just your work life. And we know for a fact that, you know, as humans, we like our general life affects how we work at work. You know, if we have a family issue or if we have anything that affects our day to day, including you know, our ambitions of our work. So I think a mentor is a bit more like encapsulating around, you know, everything, and rather than like a specific area.
Amazing. Kate.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Anisa's approach, because the way I would see it is that generally speaking, a teacher, they have a formal role in imparting knowledge to us. And it's a relationship that is formal. Like we are the student, they are the teacher. We are expecting to get knowledge and skills from this person and build us up to a certain point where we were not before. So I think that's a pretty clear relationship. I mean, with a career coach, I've always seen career coaches as basically building up your confidence. It's more about the qualitative aspects of work, like Anisa said, the work-life balance, and basically how do you manage your career from that higher level. And to me, a lot of it is like having confidence in your choices, and how do you make those choices in terms of a career direction. Like if you have 2 opportunities in front of you, how do you know which is the right one to take, and how do you feel good about the decision that you're making? Whereas a mentor to me is kind of the combination of both. So it's basically how do you essentially cultivate that combination of the knowledge and the career path you're on. But basically, once you're in the role, more or less, or once you have the knowledge already for the most part, you know, and you're already kind of on your career path, then basically to me, a mentor is that person who is oftentimes similar to where you want to be. So if you want to be a lead production artist on a game, the mentor is probably a lead production person, or there's somewhere around that. So it's a more narrow focus, because I can see, you know, there's certainly teachers who impart certain kinds of knowledge. There's career coaches of all different kinds, but a mentor to me is basically that person who's closest to what you want to do, because it's in a way, it's almost like job shadowing without job shadowing, because you want to know, how do I put that knowledge and how do I put all these things into practice? And really that to me is a key role of the mentor, is to show you, this is how I put it into practice in this kind of work. And so here's some ideas for how you can do that as well.
Awesome. Nika.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings. I always have mixed feelings about everything, right? As a lot of people know. I mean, I agree with Anisa's assessment and what everyone else is saying. But ultimately, like, I don't, like, if you're on the quick topic of like charging people for mentorship, then you're not a mentor. Like, you are a teacher, you're doing skills-based training. And yeah, you, like, some people, look, I'm not like Anisa, if you think like, or people are saying, oh, a mentor should be paid. I think it's an interesting discussion, but to me, then you're a teacher or you're a career coach, right? And I have had a teacher that I've paid for certain skills-based training, because I said, if I can't find it, doesn't mean I can just like go solicit people's like free time. I've had a career coach in between jobs. I felt like I felt a little bit of shame, actually, as if like I was doing something wrong. Like, oh, I have a career coach because I don't have my shit together, right? And there should be no shame. It's weird, right? I never thought that I would ever feel, I never thought that I'd be like too proud to get a career coach. But life happens, especially in this industry, especially like when you've gone through stuff and you don't know what you're doing next. It happens at all stages. But at mentors, I mean, I don't think like if you're like asking for payment and stuff, then like you're in the wrong business. Then go be a career coach. Like, the point of mentorship, like, mentors also learn from mentees. I mean, mentees keep me fresh. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm young. I'm still young, but my gosh, I still cannot figure out Discord. Like, it like borks my mind, like Discord and TikTok. And like, I've got a love-hate relationship with all these things. And it just like, right? I'm like, oh my God, I have become the person that I used to make fun of 10 years ago. Oh, right. But that's it. Like, mentees keep you fresh. It keeps your ear to the ground. You learn about the next generation. It makes you a better leader because you learn about the expectations. I mean, even right now, I feel like half the people we mentee or come in, they're either like, oh, I'm not good enough, so I don't apply to things. Or, and I've never seen this before, everyone's like, oh, I'm not going to intern. I'm just going to be famous on social media, and then I'll just be like the CEO of my own startup. And I'm like, what the heck? What happened to the, half of my mentorship is like, there's a ladder, man. Or, like, gotta start somewhere. You don't just go from like 3 million views on TikTok doesn't make you like a games engineer. It does, like, it blows my mind, but it keeps, mentees keep it fresh. I didn't do a great job at answering your question, Abby, but I do believe that in addition to being like a mentor, the next step is, if you have that time, if you have that budget authority, that hiring authority, sponsorship is like being somebody's freaking advocate, not just telling people a bunch of stuff. I gotta stop swearing on these calls, but also like going out there and writing those letters of recommendation and sourcing people and like having that person's resume on file and like also teaching them those interview skills so that your mentee isn't answering in a professional recruitment interview that their life goal is to have 3 million views on TikTok when they're applying to be a games engineer, right? Like, that's sponsorship. It's a lot of course correction and going out of your way to do that. I will pause. Apparently, I do feel very passionately about this question.
Yes.
So.
Which is needed and necessary, and also some definitions which were helpful. Tanja.
Yeah, so every kind of the named people answers different questions. So the teacher answers the questions. How do I do this specific thing? Where do I find this specific information? So the career coach or a coach has quite very firm setting. If we speak about coaching itself, it's usually some 4 sessions, and you sign a document, a non-disclosure agreement, and so on. So this is quite a procedure. And coaching proclaims that you have all the answers in you, and the coach asks questions. If we speak about career coaching, yeah, it also has a very specific goal to find a better job, to promote at the current job, to get a higher salary, and so on and so forth. And if we speak about a mentor, this is an alliance. This is an exchange. and both parties get something. And I will give an example. I used to be a mentor for several years for a girl who started as an office manager, and then she became a COO of a gaming company. And later on, she changed her career and had a very, very specific need. She wanted to have a better adaptation and some HR consultation. And I said, I'm sorry, mentorship is over here, and this is consultation. If you want to get this every week, firm time, firm setting, and this is gonna be charged, because I don't get anything from that. I just share information that I already have inside. Yeah, and this is not mentorship to me.
Totally. I appreciate all your answers. And I have to say also to the audience, because there's such confusion, I think, with synonyms. And we also have such a global panel that words sometimes honestly mean different things in different places. As a graduate student, I was going to say, I was always told that sponsors have proteges, and that is usually within a corporate setting, and this is a very American centric view, but that they would probably be someone who's 2 roles above you, and this is very like logistical, almost mathematic. And then a mentor could be, like we said, someone, a peer mentor or someone not at your company that's helping you from a big vision. A sponsor might be someone who just advocates for you in particular things at a specific company, and usually can be, like I said, someone 2 levels above you. So they have very different objectives of what they're doing with a mentee or protege. So just had to put that, because I know that they kind of are kind of confusing, overwhelming. Sweet. This is a really cool question, because mentorship is cyclical, which means that you can be both, and you go at different stages. You are sometimes a mentee, sometimes a mentor, and both. How do you know when you yourself are ready to mentor others? And let's go with Tanja.
Well, I really don't know. I really don't know. It just happens to you. People write you on the social media all the time. People come up to you at the conferences and they ask questions. You're being invited to different panels. You're being invited to different talks and so on and so forth. Some interviews, and you become the source of expertise. And when you happen to be open, and when people see that, they start asking more and more questions, and then you pick someone is more persistent, someone comes to you when you write a post, he writes a comment, but then he or she comes to the private messages and wants to go further, asks for something to read about that. And then you may set up a call and so on and so forth. And here you are a mentor. But on the other side, I see people who find some programs and read the description, especially in our region. First, they could never, some of them could never know that there is mentorship and what it is. And here there is a program, and they read the description and say, wow, I have so much to share and I want to do that. And now they find themselves being a mentor. So this is the path that I saw.
Amazing. Nika.
Well, I do have a policy that I state internally and talk to companies about all the time. And I often say not everyone should be a mentor. I just really vehemently believe that, as a person who runs like a 501c3, every time there is a crisis in the industry, I am the recipient of a lot of phone calls of people who suddenly want to help. And I focus on working with the team on filtering out like who's genuine and authentic, and how we can retain that versus like who's gonna like volunteer and hang out for like 2 weeks and then peace out the minute it gets hard, right? Like, so that's really the job. And mentorship is not about sitting there and telling people what to do or how to think. You sit, you listen, you ask broad questions so that the person is challenged and is able to reason through their decisions in a safe space. and you don't, it's not about telling people what to do or how to be or how to live. And oftentimes, like, there's just a lot of people who want to mentor right during or after a crisis, and like, we must do something. I'm like, we must be doing something all the time, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't like a blip or press release. It is something you practice from morning to night. It is inevitable. You make mistakes because you're not exposed to all different cultures and whatnot. And that's a privilege. It is a privilege to be exposed to many communities and get to work with many people, especially in a male-dominated field, right? Not everyone is going to know what to say or say the right thing. And you have to be open. If you're mentoring someone who doesn't look like you or comes from a different background from you, and you're mentoring them because of discipline, you have to be open to also learning about them and their history, because the advice you have is not always going to be applicable. So if you really want to mentor, you also have to think like, am I mentoring because it's going to make me feel good? And am I ready to be there when shit maybe hits the fan for this individual who's going through a tough time? And I tell our grantees all the time, we accepted 100 people this year. We have doubled the amount of people we've supported. That means we had to source 100 mentors. They're all around the world in all different time zones. And I told our grantees, I want everyone to be successful, but it's also about building resiliency and taking care of your health. It is inevitable. It is inevitable in this day and age that you are going to face hardships in this industry. I hope, like, to God or something, whatever higher power, that changes. It's not going to, I'm cynical. I don't think it's going to change in my lifetime. So I really implore that, like, when you take on a mentee, especially someone from an underrepresented background, it's not a freaking charity case. It's an investment in their future and in broadening and expanding your knowledge. So if you're mentoring just because, like, oh, something happened and I need to do something now, like, bone up a little bit on some literature and some knowledge and, like, slowly integrate. Don't just, like, pick and choose people, because when you then drop them because you realize it's too hard or it's too tough, you're part of the problem. And I see that all the time. I don't let it happen on my watch, but it happens all the time. I got it. Apparently I care a lot about this topic. We do a lot. We spend hours upon hours and late nights and early mornings doing mentor matches. So if I'm coming across a little emphatic.
No, I appreciate the passion and the behind the scenes, what goes into it. Some of these programs, I think it, at least in the audience, if you're a mentee and you apply to eventually one of these programs, I think you should see how deeply these people care on this panel, and so many other people do care, so that there are good people looking out for you, as there are, as Nika said, some not good people, but there are, I would say by heart, a lot of good people trying to advocate for you. Kate.
Yeah, I mean, all great points that were raised there. I mean, I do mentorship workshops, like things like San Diego Comic-Con and WonderCon, partially because I'm already there, but also because I created a partnership with those with the event, because I when I was there, like walking around in cosplay or whatever, I would get asked questions by people who want to work in the game industry. And so it was clear that there was a need. So we run a mentoring workshop, usually a 2 or 3 hour session at these events. And this is just an example. And I reach out to my colleagues in the game industry and say, hey, would you like to be a mentor? And now at this point, I've got a pool of people who just love doing it. And it's not just because they're getting a free Comic-Con pass, but that's probably part of it. But what's interesting, though, is I kind of drag some of them because I know their background and I know the kind of people they are, that they're good people who I know they love helping people, but they've never mentored before in like a formal like mentor setting. And so some of these people I've kind of dragged into it. And this is, of course, me making the assumption that they'll be a good mentor. But I wanted to test the assumption because I know who they are as individuals. I would not do that with a total stranger that I didn't know. But I put them in that position, and it is uncomfortable for them. And what's interesting, though, is that every single person who I've done that with, 100%, once they've done it the first time, they're like, I absolutely want to do this again. I love helping people. This is so cool. And one of the biggest excuses I hear from people is they'll say, well, I don't know anything. I mean, what do I know? It's like even people who like, especially people who are very helpful is people who are new to the game industry, you know, who've only been in the industry for like a year or two, because you know what it takes now to make that happen. You just went through that experience, and so your knowledge of just that part of it, the career path part of it, can be invaluable to people around you. Because I mean, I can tell people about that. I have mentors, you know, who are around my age, which is in our 50s, when we talk to people about getting into the game industry. But my experience was vastly different decades ago compared to the way it is now. And so I think there's those different levels of mentorship too, and what you can bring to a certain topic. And so that's one of the reasons why I also try and make sure that we do have a wide demographic of people from underrepresented backgrounds, different age groups, because, you know, that does make a huge influence on, you know, the effect is your effectiveness as a mentor. And so that's just something to keep in mind too. Because for some mentees, they might need somebody who's closer to who they are as an individual, and that might be more effective for them. So we have to keep open to that. But in terms of knowing when you can be a mentor, I would just encourage people to try it, but also I just want to absolutely plus one Nika's point that not everybody should be a mentor, because I've also dealt with some people who I gave them a shot and they just really didn't seem to do well, so I did not invite them again. You know, because it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. They're great at what they do as a job, but not everyone is cut out for this, and it's just reality.
100, totally. That makes a lot of sense, Kate. And Anisa.
Yeah, so I guess this is where with Limit Break, you know, we have huge numbers, and the reason for that is that we do want to open up the gates to anybody who wants to try becoming a mentor. With Limit Break, we do give them support, like for first-time mentors specifically. Like our program, it's really short, actually. It's only 6 months long. And a lot of first-time mentors actually quite like that because it's less of a commitment. You know, when you have like a certain date in place, they're a lot more comfortable. So, okay, it's quite short. We can try it out. And also we have a lot of support like from us, where if somebody ghosts you, which happens, it does happen quite a lot on both sides. I would say sometimes it's the mentees, sometimes it's the mentors. We're kind of here to kind of find you a new match, or even just talk it out with you. And you know, I think that just to have somebody to ask, hey, like this happened with my mentor or mentee, what are my next steps, you know? And that's kind of like where we come in, and we're like, okay, so we could try find you a new match, because you know we have the list of people who are, you know, the pool of people who are looking for people right now. Or you could kind of, sometimes there's no matches because there's always way more demand in certain areas than others. Like we have way too many programming mentors but not enough art mentors, you know, that happens as well. But also, like, it doesn't mean that you can't be part of the community, because we have you know, we have our Slack channel, we have our social media handles, where sometimes you kind of ask somebody like, oh, does anybody want to do this or do that? We've got events going on. So being, you know, I'm sorry if I'm just talking about Limit Break in general, but that's kind of like how we've been dealing with it. And it's kind of like, it's I would like to think that programs like mine is a way for you to understand mentoring, you know, if it is for you or not. You know, we're giving you that platform to try it out. And also we kind of want to put the guilt away from anybody who might actually have like a legit reason to tap out, and usually they do. Sometimes it's always like a family reason, or you know, like a big pivot, something that happened in their lives. And you know, we're here to support those who are still wanting to be in the structure, in, you know, in this whole thing. So yeah, like we try our best. Like it's a bit of a different programs have different ways of handling it. Like, so our program, we try to have as many people as possible, so we're casting our net far and wide, whereas some programs are, you know, they're picking like a very good 10 people or 5 people, and you know, they're really hand holding those specific people from start to finish. Whereas we're being quite laid back, which is like, you know, you can drop in or drop out, whatever that suits your schedule. And I think it's important to have all of these different kinds of support to, you know, to support different kinds of people, different kinds of lifestyles, and different kinds of goals. Yeah, so I think if you are ready, I know a lot of people kind of offer support from an individual basis. I've seen it on Twitter, where like art Twitter, where they say like, hey, I would I have like 5 hours free to give to 5 people for like an hour like consultation, for free for like anybody who's underrepresented and things like that. And I think that is a form of mentorship as well. So there's different levels that you can do this to. You can do it individually, you can be part of a program. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more options for people these days.
Yes, there's not one size fits all. And like we said about being a mentee and a mentor at the same time, it is possible to be both. Like I was going to say, it's secular. And like for myself, even individually, it was people like Nika and my mentors myself who were like, hey, you could mentor. And I was like, no, I'm 24. I'm not ready. But then like Kate said, sometimes it is the right time when you are closer in age to someone who might just be coming out of collegiate. And then you could also connect them with people who are awesome and who are already established in their careers. You don't need to be so, senior to be able to help someone out. And when you realize that, like, oh, I don't know, I'm still learning about ABC, but then your mentor could go, hey, you know a lot about XYZ though. You have to be self-aware. And so being self-aware about your strengths of like, wait, I do know a lot about XYZ. I'm still learning on ABC, but I know about that. And you can help someone with that. So being self-aware and taking track of where you do have strengths, I think is super important. This is kind of a quick question, but I think is really important to give actionable advice to the audience because we have a lot of programs here and organizations. But if someone right now in the audience has a mentor but doesn't really know what to do with them, like they aren't in the structure of a program, what would y'all recommend they do within that? Maybe their sessions, like what are some good programming they could do within that relationship with their mentor that are kind of quick? Let's start with Anisa.
I think it's really important to, again, if you're meeting with them, you should always have like a good agenda. If you're just meeting somebody without like an idea of where the conversation is supposed to go, you're going to just be wasting time, right? So again, if you have a specific question, a specific problem that you need to figure out, then that will guide your conversations with your mentor. Even just like long-term goals and things like that, like a good advice to mentors to ask your mentees, like, what's on your mind, and that open question could start the actual things that's the problem, and then you kind of get to the roots of it. So yeah, like always go into it, and with the intent of having quality conversations, just having that in mind before you're going in. And sometimes a lot of people actually do kind of like email in a bunch of questions beforehand so that the mentors can kind of look up some stuff before the meeting actually happens. But yeah, it's all about respecting someone's time and knowing exactly what you're trying to solve.
Totally. Kate.
Yeah, the approach that I often take with pretty much all my mentees, I don't have regular meetings with them. I don't set a schedule or anything like that. I do expect them to come to me with some kind of issue that they're dealing with, because I can't read their minds. So like others have said earlier, it's like being a really, really good listener. So I listen and I absorb and try and understand the breadth of what they're dealing with, whatever that issue might be. And then my approach with my mentees is to basically issue a quest, because this is the game industry. So I basically, and I might not do it right immediately on the call. I'll say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a couple of days with an idea for what I think that something that I'm going to challenge you to do. And I often put it in the form of a quest, because I want them to basically take the time to go do this thing, whether it's a specific task, a piece of knowledge, or something, that basically fits their situation. And I tell them, I say, okay, when you feel you're ready and you've done the quest and you've done what I've asked you to do, then come back to me and we'll talk and we'll kind of debrief and go through that. And I have found, at least in my experience, that's worked really well, because I don't want to pressure them like okay, see you next time, this same time next week. And they're like, well, I really haven't even had time to wrap my head around what you asked me to do. It's like, so I tend to leave it more in their court. And of course, if a certain, like if weeks or months pass, then obviously I'll give them a little ping saying, hey, how's it going? And I hope things are fine. But we also set that up so that they know they can always just, come to me with a quick question saying, hey, I wasn't quite sure what you meant for me to do, or I'm having trouble finding what you asked me to find. And then of course we can talk through that. But that's basically the approach I tend to take, because I want them to feel like they are accomplishing something in this mentoring relationship. So it's not just all me, just, blah, blah, blah. Okay, then see you next week.
Totally. And Nika.
Okay, my alarm's going off. I I'm more structured about it. If you're the mentee, it's on you to set the cadence and chase your mentor, etc. Don't have your mentor be chasing you. That's super unacceptable. I mean, sometimes life happens, that's fine. But like, I mean, if you need like this, you know, it's not going to be the same for everyone, but like a good baseline that I set up is like, okay, on your own structure, like what's your goal 6 months from now? What's your goal 1 year from now? Set a monthly meeting with your mentor, and always make sure your mentor knows my goal in 6 months is this, my goal in 1 year is this, and have your mentor be like, and how are these things solving for, you know, following up to the 6 month mark, the 1 year mark, and gamify. Use your mentor to hold you accountable. We all have projects that we just put off that just could take us 30 minutes to do. So your mentor can also be like an accountability buddy. Your mentorship meeting should be the thing that drives you like, oh shit, that's my deadline to get this thing done. I see people who have these goals that don't like work towards them for years and years. And I'm one of them. So like I create structured accountability for myself and my goals. And that's important. And sometimes you're just going to have a bad month or a meeting because like shit's going on in the world and you need to talk about it and you need to like reason through it and figure it out. That's okay. That's what it's there for. But I do think like it is a, you know, it's not a waste, but time is the one thing you don't get to buy back in this world. So use it wisely.
Yes, and Tanja.
Well, I would just add that you need to be predictable and proactive, and that's it.
Love that. Short and sweet and also impactful. So we have reached kind of our ending segment. That went by so fast. I'm so thankful for y'all. But before we go, I would love if each of you could shout out your orgs where people can find you if they're interested in applying to any of your programs and you individually. Let's start with Tanja.
Well, I would like to invite you to join To Mentors Dialogue, which is going to be announced soon, especially for those who are from the Eastern Europe. And I would also like to speak about Achievers Hub. It's a solution for indie developers who can find their mentors on every aspect of game development and promotion. Besides that, you can find there an investor and a publisher. So try to find Achievers Hub and read about the opportunities that they offer. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Yes, Nika.
Yeah, no, thanks again to Xsolla and Abby and the panelists for just like pulling this together. It's really important. We currently are full throttle in our current programs. The IGDA Foundation this year held 2 programs. We gave away a ton of money for people trying to create prototype games so that, you know, creators didn't have to worry about like rent or food or whatever, could actually just make whatever they wanted using web monetization. Secondly, we are currently running our diverse game developers virtual exchange program. And this is for aspiring folks that come in and they want to find their way in games. These programs are fully underway and applications have closed. You know, so in terms of mentorship, just keep an eye out for programming next year. We do have a game jam that's currently running. I don't know how in this chat to populate a link to that, but it's meant just for diverse developers. And there is, you know, a lot of dialogue and networking that can happen in that space if wanted. And if you want to mentor, we do have a couple of mentor slots left. We do vet all of our mentors very, very heavily. So if you have a desire to mentor, if you are someone who is, you know, mid-career or senior or have had a couple years in, we have a lot of students that have no clue what they want to do in the games industry, and they just want someone who can just talk a little bit more and do some games 101 mentoring. So I would say the best way is, I guess, to just email me at Nika at IGDAfoundation.org, N as in Nancy, IKA at IGDAfoundation.org, and I'll get back to you.
Amazing. Kate.
Yes, so you can find Global Game Jam at globalgamejam.org. Pretty simple. So as we are a vast global community, the event, our last live event in 2020 had almost 50,000 people in 118 countries at 935 sites around the world, making about 9,600 games in 48 hours. So it's a big community, a lot of people dispersed across the globe. We have a Discord channel. I mean, if you're looking for mentors, you're looking for people who just, you want to find out more about getting into game development, or just, you know, if you're already in game development, about just connecting with that kind of community, definitely encourage you to check us out. You can also find, you can email me. I'm kate@globalgamejam.org. You can also find me on Twitter as Geogrify, GEOGRIFY.
Awesome. Anisa.
Yeah, so you can find out more about Limit Break at limitbreak.co.uk. We are specifically for the UK, and I know there's a lot of people outside of the UK who are looking for similar mentorship programs. I say I started it by myself 3 years ago. You can definitely do it yourself as well. If anybody wants resources on how to start your own mentorship program in your own country, please feel free to get in touch with me. Just go to limitbreak.co.uk. We have a contact form, and also our socials are at LB Mentorship on Instagram and Twitter. And also I'm on Twitter quite a lot. I'm at Studio Anisa. Yeah, like my mentorship program, Limit Break, is modeled after one in Australia, and also one in Montreal, Canada. So, you know, and I kind of made it my own. If you want to start your own, and, you know, finding out what that looks like for you, everybody's different. Everybody has like different ideas of what mentorship look like. And I think it's definitely worth starting something yourself if it's something that, you know, you feel very passionate about. And if it's, you know, if there's no programs like that in your country, in your community, then that's a sign that it's for you to start one.
Amazing. This is so wonderful. I just want to give a big thank you to all of our amazing, amazing panelists for spending time today to talk about this. A shout out to Guy and Aida behind the scenes for also planning, and to Xsolla Diamond Club for presenting this. I was your host, Abby Sherlock. I am ABBY_Sherlock. Yes, like Sherlock Holmes on all social media platforms. We are so grateful that you joined us today, and we will see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.